Okay, hey, welcome guys. Thanks for coming. We are going to do a quick I/O recap. Myself and Ryan went to Google I/O this year, and we put together this presentation deck, which has a bunch of information about stuff we found interesting about I/O. Some of it was related specifically to Android developers, some of it not, but we're going to go through it really quickly and focus on the stuff that is Android developer focused. So Ryan has the first set of slides, and I can't hear you, Jeff. And then we'll go on from there. Please feel free to interject and stuff. And I'm not sure if you guys came to the mobile fireside chat, but this is the same presentation we gave there, but this will be focused on Android. So feel free to interject, ask questions, or whatever. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. And there you go.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the same thing that we had for mobile fireside chat, but we want to make it a little bit more of a conversation. So interject where fit. If we don't make it through all the slides, that's not an issue. So one of the things that was announced was Kotlin First. As Nerdery, we've been focused on using Kotlin for at least the past year, and a Kotlin development shop, and working to migrate existing Java projects and applications over to Kotlin. So Google announcing that not only do they support Kotlin, but it is the primary and preferred language of Android development, just further hones in what we have done. This is also something that we've included within the client deck that we're going to send out. Does kind of a little bit from Google I/O as well as WWDC, to really say, okay, we've been talking about Kotlin. Here's some advantages, and not only is this something that we have been pushing for, now it's actually supported. Now it's actually the preferred language by Google. Next. Next. Can we go back to compose? Was that a thing? Was it the next one? Accessibility? Okay. So Jetpack Compose, I think most people have heard about this. I don't think anybody, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if anybody here has actually played around with it yet. But it is a declarative UI approach that is familiar to React Native as well as Flutter. Still, it's in pre-alpha. One of the things I want to say to this, though, is after WWDC this past week, it seems more and more that declarative composable UIs are what's going to be happening. They themselves have also created a similar approach for using creating UIs for iOS. So this is something that we definitely want to keep in mind. Obviously, right now it's not in the state of using on a client project, but it's something we definitely want to keep in mind and maybe even play around with in our spare times. It is compatible with existing views. I don't know fully exactly what that means, but there's no XML templates. It's all built in Kotlin. You pass in the objects that you want to use within the views, so the view model, whatever it might be, and display that within the views. Does utilize Kotlin DSLs, which is a great feature of Kotlin. Yeah, next. So I won't get into this too much because it's not really Android. Uh, okay, we'll just skip it then. Privacy as well. I think this is primarily related to, a lot of these are primarily related to the apps that Google has created. There is some focus on the federated learning. So knowing that machine learning, we can still get the benefits of machine learning from user data, but it's anonymized so that users' information is not at risk. Duplex, I'm going to skip that one. That's not really Android related. And then Android Q interface updates.
I think these are my slides.
Is it yours? Okay, go ahead.
Did anybody have any comments or anything about that initial stuff?
I definitely want to. I would definitely love to hear people's thoughts on some of the declarative composable UIs.
I was just looking through the.
If anybody's used it or has interacted with it in other areas such as React or Flutter.
I was just going to say I was looking in the ASG in the Compose channel just before this meeting, actually kind of get a feeling for the maturity level of it. Obviously now that Swift UI is out, people are asking a lot about that. It's super not mature, Compose. In particular, at I/O, they didn't even have image support, which so people are asking a lot of questions about composable animations, how it fits with views or the existing layout containers, and they don't really have a story for that yet. It's super early, but obviously they'll have to push really hard to make it happen. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the Android Q interface updates. So if you guys remember, in previous IOs, they introduced new a different type of pill-based navigation control, which didn't work very well, and people were not very happy with it. This is the next generation of that. Looks like I talk about dark theme first. I'm going to continue talking about gestural navigation. This is the next generation of that, where basically now they're getting rid of all the buttons entirely. We're now going to have all swipe gestures to do the different main controls that we have, like home. It's going to be a swipe up from the bottom. Recents is a swipe up and hold, and it's in the middle. And then back, interestingly enough, which is not shown in this video, is swipe from either direction. Which is going to be kind of a nuanced thing, in particular because those swipe gestures will likely get in the way of other swipe gestures within our apps themselves. Obviously you can think of if you're swiping to remove a view versus wanting to go back, especially if you're going from both sides, that could get confusing. And so what they have is this concept of exclusion zones, which for us Android developers, we will use view insets to make sure that we're respecting the different exclusion zones and not placing any of our actual controls inside of that. And if you think about the exclusion zones a little bit, they're just like we're used to already on Android. Like the red one on the left is the current exclusion zone that exists for your nav controls on the bottom now, like for your home. The other thing I wanted to mention is they said that their control mechanisms going forward are going to be the 3 buttons that exist now or this gesture-based navigation. So they're going to have those 2 UI paradigms going forward, and the pill-based one, which we talked about, that was introduced last year that wasn't successful, is going away. Okay, so the other cool thing or interesting and important thing that I definitely wanted to share with this group was dark theme. at both WWDC and I/O this year. Both platforms announced that they're going to be supporting native dark theme for the entire phone, which is really cool. Dark theme's great for accessibility and contrast. You can see how the top view over here on the right has really good like visual contrast. It's really easy to see. So some of that is really good, and people are really going to like it. It's going to be really important that we support it, because if we don't, what's going to happen is people are going to get the experience that you're looking at here on the right, where different apps that don't support this are going to look visually very different, right? In split screen, or if you're switching between apps in dark mode and suddenly you encounter something that's in light, it's going to be visually jarring for the user and going to be bad. Besides the fact that it's kind of a stylistic hotness to support dark theme, so we're going to want to do that to be kind of stylish, and stylish is, I guess, a good term for it. The way that we support this in Android, currently there's like multiple steps. The first step is going to be, well, if you currently use AppCompat 1 and Material Design Theme 1.1, you can actually put an attribute in your main theme that's called Force Dark. That basically will allow when the user changes the preference from dark to light, it will try to figure out your UI and apply changes universally. I haven't tried that yet. I just can't imagine that that's going to work very well. There's tons of nuance to how like dark mode is handled. Like in particular, how certain shadows show up was an interesting kind of nuance that they talked about I/O this year. And certainly you also have to really think about your image attributes that when you changed between the different modes, if you have a color in your images that is not contrasting well, it's going to be hidden or not show up well. Your touch targets may not be easy to see. So there's lots of important nuance to that. So if you are going to go into the trouble of figuring out how to do dark mode correctly, the way that you do that is you create multiple themes using the day-night mode support that has existed in the framework since I don't know how long ago. But that's the approach to use to support this, and basically you will support day or night themes that have light and dark attributes that the system will switch between as appropriate. I started playing with this a little bit, and the thing that is important to note is if you have implemented the material design color theme and text styles and a variety of things, in particular the color surfaces and things for material design, this will work pretty well. If you haven't, there's going to be a lot of work to do to make sure that your app is up to snuff with styles. And as everybody in this room knows, styles are super fun to work with and really easy to understand, and they don't get complicated at all. So, anyway, so there will be a lot of effort involved, I think, to kind of bring apps up to snuff with dark theme. A lot of the same sort of effort, I think, that was involved in some of our other transitions, where we're cleaning up stuff to make it kind of more compliant to what it should be originally. And once we do that, things should work pretty well with some nuances. I am going to move on to discussions relating to machine learning, and in particular machine learning aspects that us as Android developers can really use. I'll focus on that. So the first thing that you folks have all probably heard about is that they announced this year through some sort of, they said it was a really complex computer algorithm problem, but they managed to reduce 100 gigabyte language processing model down to 0.5 gigabytes. So what that means is instead of that language processing model needing to reside in the cloud, it can now be moved on to the device, which is going to enable a ton of really interesting things. a lot of these things right now are really user focused and actually aren't going to require developer input, but they're going to probably impact us. Some things that they were talking about were live captioning on any video. So I know some of us have worked with media apps. Captioning is kind of a whole beast and difficult to implement correctly in things. Now, because of this natural language processing model on device, they're actually going to be able to live caption any video. So that means a video that your kid sends, or whatever. It doesn't have to have the actual closed captioning information packaged with that media. So that's going to really enable a lot of things. And they talked about a lot of other really interesting aspects of language processing, in particular related to understanding different dialects and learning about people that have speech disabilities and how they're going to be able to use this language processing model to enable a bunch of really interesting like translation and accessibility impacts and things. So it's really interesting. It's probably not going to impact us too much as developers, except for this next slide, which is talking about ML Kit, which are APIs that we as Android developers can access and use. ML Kit already exists. It's kind of like a interface between TensorFlow and it also provides an interface to Firebase. So it provides a lot of the different frameworks to allow you to like get your models distributed to your clients and things like that. But the other thing that they just announced at Google I/O is 2 new features for APIs that we can use. One of them is on-device translation that we were just talking about. They've created an API that we can use as developers. And then the other one that is really cool is object detection and tracking, which can obviously have a lot of different impact for different apps that we might want to think about for using in all sorts of different space. So something I wanted to share that is maybe is actually designed not for the people in this room, and that is this thing that they have that's called AutoML. Basically, this is a machine learning framework that Google has that allows you to, without a single line of code, as they kept saying, create machine learning models that you can then distribute to your clients, whether that be a web page, a web app, or a Android app. So previously, it was really easy, and I played with this before, to create an image classification model where you basically can upload a bunch of different images that have been labeled, and then it will generate the image classification model that you can then use elsewhere. They've now introduced other features, tabular input, and prediction output. The tabular input basically allows you to put tabbed data into the machine learning model, and then it can help you create different models that you can use based on tabular input. So it's kind of a data-centric thing, but it seems like it's really powerful and could be a really nice way to create some models that we can use on our clients without actually having to go through all the work of understanding TensorFlow and generating a model that way. I'm going to skip over this, but if you guys are interested in human-centered machine learning and understanding how AI and machine learning impact business processes and how we keep them from being biased, you should check out this guidebook that they announced at Google I/O. It's good stuff. Also, they announced material design specifications, which are cool and help us, learn about different image classification and how to do it right from a design level. You don't need to go through that too much. I did want to share for this group, because it's important to note that they're announcing a new way that the share system works, and this is definitely just for this group. So as it works now, when you go to share something into the system goes and scans through the entire device to see what applications can support that share intent, and then it generates the list, which is slow and also can be somewhat unpredictable in how your apps show up in the share menu, and you can't control that. They're going to create a new mechanism for share intents and it's actually the same mechanism that we use for adaptive icons shortcuts, where if you hold down a button, you can launch an intent to do something else. So those same share intents can be registered with the system, so they're pre-registered and they will show up instantly. And also, this is the important thing, they'll also show up at the top of the share menu. So if we implement our share intents properly, we'll be both highlighted at the top of the share menu quicker, and we'll also have top billing. There's a new API for camera. Cameras are a pain in the rear end in Android and always have been. So they introduced a API layer on top of Camera 2. It has 3 main use cases that it supports, and it's supposed to be super easy to kind of implement these 3 things. One is preview an image. One is do some background image analysis, kind of getting into some of the image classification or machine learning stuff we talked about. And then the other is actually capture an image, which you need to do before you preview it. So if you're using any of those 3 use cases, they've created some really simple APIs that allow you to create flows that are like observable and lifecycle aware to do those things. So the other thing that's really interesting about this, so I mentioned they're lifecycle aware. So basically you're able to initiate these use cases and then use callbacks to manage different response states. The other cool thing is that you can also run these different use cases concurrently. So if you have a workflow that you want to do multiple of those use cases at the same time, you can let the system itself manage the async nature of those things and create a flow where all of those things are combined, and you can combine these different use cases in these different ways, which I shared here. I wanted to go through really quick, just chat about the Play Store changes a little bit. There's some important nuances that our customers, I think, should know about that also we should as well. The ratings algorithm has changed. So iOS has always had a preference or a idea that your ratings can be based on just the latest release, and your latest release may have more weighting than your past releases, whereas the Google Play Store has always been every rating you've ever got forever and ever and ever. So they're actually going to change the way that ratings is calculated. You can see that now if you go to the Play Store. I think I actually have a slide for that. No, doesn't matter. Oh, I do. So you can go to, right now, you can go to the Play Store and see what that's going to look like. But it will go live, I think they said in August, it says here in the slide. So they were pushing a lot of information about dynamic delivery, which is driven by modular architecture. This is a really interesting aspects of Play Store distribution that I think is important for us to kind of think about. They announced a few things are out of beta, on-demand delivery and instant experiences. These are where you have basically features that are only downloaded when the user needs them. And then conditional delivery is a similar kind of aspect to that, which is new. They added, obviously I'm short on time, so I'm not going to go into the nuances of those things. But obviously we could give a whole presentation about Play Store distribution and some of the aspects of that. One cool thing that we always struggle with at Nerdery that I wanted to share, that could be a cool feature that we use, is Play Store distribution has a new channel now called internal app sharing. So it's still configured in the same way as you would configure like the beta or the alpha channels. You have an opt-in URL and you create a list of emails that can use that channel. Once you have someone subscribe to that, you can upload an APK. the version number and the APK signature do not matter. So you don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. It's like an instant channel, and also it's supposed to be instant. Whereas some of the other channels, internal app testing is also supposed to be instant. Alpha and beta channels can take a while. So that could be a really nice way to quickly distribute apps where the client, our customer, whether that's QA or the customer themselves, get something pushed to them immediately when we, drag an APK into a folder. Also related, and it's cool to note, and this is the last slide, so we're perfect timing wise. They introduced a new feature this year that allows us to create in-app update really easily. So lots of our customers ask us to implement the ability to block a user if they have not don't have the latest version of the software, or prompt them in app to check the Play Store for the latest update. The Play Store now has created functionality for us to do this with a really simple API. So there's two different sort of flows that they support. One is a flexible flow that is presenting the user the option to update. We have an update available for you. It's ready. You don't have to take it. Or the one on the right, which is you must update the app. You're not supporting our version. One thing that's worth noting is, in order for this to work, the code supporting this needs to be up in the Play Store. So if the user client doesn't have an APK supporting this software down on the client, we're not going to be able to use this, because obviously there's code that we put into the code. There's code that we put into the code that calls this functionality. So and it's really, really straightforward. You just need to put a if required API call, which will present the different flows. What I wanted to share really quick, we don't need to get into it too deep, is you can also create some conditional API flows. So if we want to say if update required, but we may want to check their version number perhaps. Maybe we care more about certain versions, and we'll prompt them if they have versions that aren't supportive of what we need. So that is the last slide. Thank you for coming. We're kind of out of time. If anybody has any questions, we can cover them. Otherwise, well, I'll leave that out.